Hello there. Welcome to another edition of Planning in Practice. Today we are here with John Hannon. He is a very esteemed and sought out estate planning attorney here in Orange County. And he's going to talk to us about some recent client situations that he's been working through. So I'm going to turn it over and let John get started.
Thanks, Greg. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
Yeah, I thought it'd be good just to kind of share some of the issues I see in trust administration.
Sure.
So do a lot of trust administration, do a lot of estate planning, and I think a lot of times the administration side can inform the planning side.
Yeah.
Kind of see like what goes wrong, things like that.
Of course.
So something I come into a lot, I'll call it a stale trust administration. So the scenario would be something where you have husband and wife set up a joint revocable living trust.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very normal. And then at the death of the first spouse, surviving spouse, let's say it's the wife, she's grieving, doesn't really, want to deal with estate planning, doesn't want to talk to lawyers or accountants, and basically just doesn't administer the trust. Several years go by, she passes, the kids come to me and say, okay, John, we got to administer this trust. I'm reading this trust and I have some questions. I say, wait a second, this type of trust is supposed to be split at the first death. Did that happen? And I get a blank stare and I say, oh, it probably didn't happen. So why that's a problem is because certain types of trusts, when they get split, they'll be split at the first death into a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust. And that irrevocable trust, it can be different types of flavors of that. You sometimes hear bypass, credit shelter, Q-tip, marital, all sorts of different ways. But that split was there on purpose. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that might be on purpose because for family dynamic reasons. So if it's a blended family with kids from prior marriages, you have that irrevocable trust is supposed to protect the inheritance of the first spouse to die, right? So that the surviving spouse can't disinherit them. Right. So it might be that. But also might have been for tax reasons. And you see a lot of this in older trusts before really 2010. Before 2010, you'd almost always see a split between an A and a B trust. Mm-hmm. And the B trust would be a bypass or a credit shelter trust. Sure. And the purpose of that trust was that assets put into that trust are sheltered from estate tax in the future. Mm. So if assets are in that B trust, they can grow to, say, $1 billion, and they'll never be subject to estate tax, which is great. Yeah. Except if you don't have $1 billion, right? Except if, you think about the current estate tax exemption amount. So, the estate tax is like the death tax people talk about. You pass away, and the government says, oh, great, you died. Yeah. For the privilege of dying, we're going to tax you 40%. You're like, oh my gosh. So there's an exclusion. The first X number of dollars is excluded from estate tax. And so right now, if you pass away this year, $15 million is excluded from that estate tax.
Which is changing.
Yeah. So it changes every year. Mm-hmm. We actually had a big change with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Sure. It got set to $15 million 2026, indexed to inflation and permanent. You always got to put permanent in quotes with Congress. Okay, so going back to this B trust, let's say your total husband and wife is only less than 10 million. You say, we don't need 15 times 2. We don't have $30 million of assets. We don't really need that. So that B trust becomes less important from 2010 on because there was a tax change. That gets a little nerdy, I won't go into. So now what people are really planning for is not so much avoiding estate tax, but avoiding capital gains. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's the problem.
Which is a big thing.
Yeah, it's a big thing. So here's the problem. You have the first spouse passes away, maybe, and then there was no administration. 10 years pass. This is very common. 10 years pass. No administration was done. So you can imagine the assets that should have been in the B trust have significant capital gains.
Oh, yeah.
And then when the second spouse dies, we have a problem. Mm-hmm. Because they didn't separate the assets into two trusts, it's like, well, what are you supposed to do? Because the assets in that revocable trust, they get a step up in basis for income tax purposes. So no capital gains. Right. Assets in that B trust don't.
Oh boy.
So you have that 10 years of capital gains that now have to be realized, but you never did an administration, so you don't know which assets are supposed to be in there. right? So it's a problem. So I have to have this unfortunate conversation with the children and say, here's a scenario. Do you get to pick and choose after the fact, right? And say, oh, well, it would have been better to have assets that don't appreciate in that bypass trust.
Yeah.
But those appreciate, like your house, well, we definitely should have put that in the survivor. Or, on an audit, is IRS not going to buy that and say, you didn't do administration. We're going to split it right down the middle. Everything gets split in half.
Yeah.
Right? So
Which can be painful.
It can be painful. So, I guess all sorts of questions like, well, can we just not tell the IRS? You can't tell me or you. We're not telling the IRS, right?
Yeah.
So no, there is supposed to be a split that should have happened.
Yeah.
And so there is going to be substantial capital gains likely on half the assets in the estate.
Yeah.
It's a difficult conversation. It's a difficult administration. Now, if they would have administered earlier and split those assets, we could have done some good planning at that point.
Of course.
Maybe we could have put assets we knew were going to go up in value. Put all that in the survivors and put the assets that less likely to appreciate in the bypass.
Yeah.
A lot of times those bypass trusts have, bells and whistles on distribution. And you could say, well, we're going to try to distribute over the years a lot of this bypass trust out.
Yeah.
So that there isn't really any assets in that bypass trust.
Yeah.
Right? So different things you could have done.
Of course.
On that. So I think, when I see stale administration and say, oh man, there was missed opportunities. One is, you got to talk to an attorney after someone passes away. A good attorney will say, hey, you know what? This particular trust you've set up, really not much to do, right? But others will say, actually, there is a split. There's some planning we can do after the fact.
Sure.
Let's have that conversation. But I would also say that's why the estate plan should be known by the financial planner, right?
Yes.
Because people only see me on like events,
right?
Birth of a child, buying a giant asset, selling a giant asset, someone passes away, or planning for that. They see you all the time.
Yes.
And so, seeing you and you seeing them regularly and knowing what the plan is, you can say, well, you know what? Tax laws changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe this plan doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, so what does it look like for you to have, because you're obviously financial planning, but what about the estate planning component? How do you incorporate that for your clients and what you do?
Yeah, great question. So we talk about that in almost every meeting. What we try to look for and see is kind of like what you do. Is there a life event that has happened? Is there something that's changed? Is there something in the goals that have changed? Are we adjusting what we're planning for? What does that look like? And then if it is substantial, does your estate planning attorney know? Because here's the thing. I, on paper, know what certain trusts can and can't do, but I'm not the professional. What I tell clients is, look, I'm helping you by being your quarterback. Something's happened. Let me get you in touch with the proper person who can fix that, whether it's your estate planning attorney, or even your CPA. Like, I can help you figure out the next steps on what that would look like. For example, if someone comes to me and says, well, I do have money and we do have trust, what do I do with it? Well, the first thing is you need to talk to your estate planning attorney. When was it last updated? How is it supposed to be distributed? Are your wishes still current? Has family dynamics changed? I have seen on my end, and I know you have, but when clients come to us, hey, again, my mother or father passed, they've got this trust. Well, yeah, but there's 4 other people on here. Have you guys talked about exactly what this is supposed to look like? Because it's supposed to be distributed this one goes to a minor. It can't be touched right now. I mean, it can get very complicated on our end. And I can't do anything without that legal piece of paper saying that this is what has to happen. A lot of people come to us and say, well, hey, you have the copy of the trust. This person has passed. I want my money. Doesn't work that way. I've got to have more to it than just, here's a death certificate, here's this, well, here's the wishes, right? But there's several other people that need to be aware of this. Now, if you're the only decision maker, okay, we can talk about that. But distributions still have to be set up.
Yeah, and that's why I love when a planner's and financial planner's involved in the trust administration, because I can say things from a legal perspective or, here's how the distributions or the accountings or notices work. But then when people what are they actually getting? What's the beneficiary getting? I love having the planner involved because you can say, hey, maybe we do a, pro rata split of everything.
Sure.
Maybe it makes sense to do non-pro rata or in kind. Certain people get houses, certain people get stocks. You think about the markets right now, fluctuating. Maybe
Yeah.
we're down instead of selling everything. Maybe it makes sense to actually do distributions of the shares so we're not taking losses.
Absolutely.
So all those are great. I mean, I can't give financial advice. So that's where I think it's really helpful to have somebody who knows here is at any given moment what the family owns and the plan so that if something happens, I can just go to you and say.
Well, and it's important too for us to have family meetings, like when we meet with clients, we try to have as much of the next generation involved as possible, because the only thing that's consistent in our world is inconsistency. Every family is different. And to further compound your point here of certain family members may have, siblings, maybe this person is in need of more liquidity. Maybe the other brother has a very high paying job and doesn't need any of the money. It's very easy for us to look at a trust and what they've got and the investable assets and say, okay, here's how we're going to split this. So the people who are inheriting this, it works best for them. Because for this person, this brother over here, hypothetically, who's kind of not doing so well, and now all of a sudden he's getting all this money, but he's getting a tax bill with it, it's going to eat most of that. And this brother over here who didn't need it, there's so many different ways to split up an estate for people. But you think about it going back to what the parents wanted. They wanted to take care of their kids. Yeah. And they trust you and they trust me to help make those decisions. And a lot of people who administer a trust, they don't think to consider that. I mean, they're still more than likely still grieving. Yeah. It's not something that comes to mind. How is this going to benefit my brother the best? We also see the other side of how can I keep more of this for me? So again, keeping that in mind as well of, what were the original intentions of the trust and the wishes? Because as we've both seen the good and the bad, people try to do things that they normally could or should not do.
That's good.
Yeah. So John, if going back to this example, this recent client, what's one thing they maybe could have done, or maybe a better question is, how stuck or how difficult is their situation now that the parents did not split the trust?
Yeah, I mean, stuck-wise, there's a lot of open questions there. Because you have a scenario where if they had a different, maybe estate plan, some things you can't change. If it was a plan before 2010, again, a lot of these AB splits, was baked into it. And if someone passes away before then, that's just the way it is. And if they would have come in for administration, again, that bypass trust usually has distribution provisions. We can try to start kicking out principal so that it lessens the impact of the capital gains so that there maybe is none.
Yeah.
In terms of, so that's some things you could have done after someone passes away. And then in terms of the scenario, what's the tax impact? Yeah, probably paying capital gains on the assets in that bypass trust, and likely to be safest, you're just going to split all the assets as of the second date of death right down the middle.
Yeah.
And so you're paying capital gains on a house, on a personal residence that typically, if you come to me on the first death, we're going to move all of that over to the survivor's trust, so we don't have to have any capital gains on, real estate.
Absolutely.
In the survivor's trust.
Yeah. So for the people watching today, is if they feel that they're in this situation or they want a second opinion, second look, what would you tell them?
Talk to you.
Okay, talk to me first.
Talk to an attorney. And, just say, here's the estate plan. Here's where we're at. What can we do? And I'm happy to have those, conversations with people and point them in the right direction. And sometimes the answer is just like, there's nothing you can do, or you're in a good spot. But other times there might be work you need to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, this has been another episode of Planning in Practice with John here. Before we go, John, thank you so much. For the people watching, how would they get a hold of you?
Well, they can contact me. I work at a law firm called Murtaugh, and one of the estate planning, trust administration, and tax attorneys there. So you can find us on the website, Murtaugh Law, and reach out to me.
Absolutely. You're also welcome to reach out to me here at Prosperitas, and we can get you in touch with John and his partners. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks, Grant.
All right.